Welcome to the Action Network podcast. This is the recap episode for week 15. I am Evan Abrams, Director of Research here at the Action Network. And as always, I am joined by the one and the only Brandon Anderson. Brandon, first of all, before we start here, what's up? How are you?
Doing well. Fun day of football. The bye weeks are over. The late afternoon slate was loaded. We were excited for these games today, and I feel like the day delivered. We had some good football.
Yeah, we're going to talk about everything, but we're obviously going to start with Sunday Night Football, and I think we can be pretty quick here. Green Bay, Seattle. Green Bay wins a game 30-13, covers the 3-point spread on the road. Total goes under 48. I mean, this game felt like it was kind of over before it started. Green Bay scores in its first 4 possessions, touchdown, field goal. Now Seattle, they go no 3 and outs, but to me, it's a turnover. It's stalling drives. And after you turn around, Geno throws the interception off his back foot into double coverage, into the end zone, down 17-3, and it's just a backbreaker. At that point, even before Sam Howell enters the picture, you say to yourself, this game's pretty much over. Green Bay's leading 20-3 at the half, and Geno gets hurt. Now, I feel like I do have to say this because I tweeted it out, and it's just insane how they couldn't move the ball literally on any possession. So here is Seattle's drive yardage after Sam Howell enters the game. -2, -6, 0. 45. Now that's a 24-yard touchdown run by Charbonnet. 5, -6, -4, and 11, which is their last drive, all 3 rushes before they ended the game. So at that point, you just can't find yourselves back in a ball game. Then you're down 20-3 against a Green Bay team that doesn't feel like it's turning it over as much as they had been before. Jordan Love now 4 straight games without an interception, which is very positive for a QB who was leading the league, I believe, at one point. And then let me just toss you some overall facts on the day that kind of work into this game. So home dogs this week went 1-5 against the spread. Overall, they are 34-48, having their second worst season against the spread since 2003, 42%. And then you flip it. Road faves were 6-0 straight up this week, entering Atlanta on Monday Night Football, but they are 13-1 over the last 3 weeks and 33-8 since week 9. So they are kind of rolling right now. Teams who go on the road, laying points. And I think a lot of us are trained to be interested in home dogs, and it just hasn't been the right way to roll this year. And Sunday night unders, which I tweeted out as well, 11-4 this year and 40-19 since 2022. So that's been interesting. I'm curious, just overall, your thoughts. Seattle and Rams, now both 8-6 in that division, kind of knotted up. Seattle now plays the Rams week 18. They lost to them already. I can't believe the Rams are in first place there. I know we have some Seattle tickets. Any quick thoughts before we move to Buffalo, Detroit?
Yeah, in a weird way, everything is week 18 now. Barring the Rams and Seahawks both collapsing, the Cardinals are still in it, kind of, but the Cardinals really need a lot of help still. They're going to probably have to win out and get multiple Seattle and LA losses. It looks very likely at this point, especially for Seattle. It looks like they just need to win that week 18 game, basically.
Got it.
I think either way, so they're tied right now. The Rams won the first game, so they'd be the division winner right now. But if Seattle wins that game, then they get the tiebreaker back, I think, because of division record. If the Rams win that game, they clinch the tiebreaker. In a weird way, either of the teams trailing the other by a game going into week 18 is kind of going to not matter, I think, because it's just going to be down to that game either way. So I'm less worried about Seattle losing this particular game. I'm more concerned that they now have to play Minnesota with maybe Sam Howell. That doesn't seem great. Sam Howell eats sacks like he's going out of style. Don't love that. I love the spot for Seattle before this. I don't know what I feel. I do know what I feel about it now. So, again, even losing that game, not necessarily so terrible. I think basically, barring a weird Arizona thing, we are careening toward Seattle Rams as that week 18 Sunday Night Football for the last spot. I think that's where we're headed. I can't say I feel great about it. I got a lot of Seattle Island futures. I bet a lot against the Rams. I think that's basically shot at this point into the unders. You can't feel good, but Seattle's defense can lick its wounds and get back. I still believe on that side of the ball. They need to get Geno healthy for sure. They need to get Kenneth Walker back out there. The offensive line did look, had some moments here. So I feel like that's the overall spot, but obviously a big win for the Packers too to kind of solidify their position as well.
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay's only lost to Detroit, Philly, and Minnesota this year, so not too shabby on their resume. They don't have any real bad losses. And at this point, it's interesting that the AFC West and NFC North look like they're about to get 6 of the 14 teams into the field. All right, let's keep rolling here. Buffalo at Detroit. Game of the day, and I think it lived up to the bill. Buffalo wins a game 48-42, 2.5-point dogs on close. Total sales over a close of 55.5 after it went up from 54.5 on game day. Got some steam there. So this was the highest total in any game since Bills Chiefs back in October of 2022. Closed at the exact same number. And right from the start, this was a perfect start for Buffalo's offense. First 3 drives, 25 plays, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns in 13 minutes of time. They chewed up some clock. They drove the field. They had no issues. And then the whole first half was just kind of a great movie, right? Like Buffalo's going for it on 4th down. Detroit gets the touchdown to Skipper. Allen has the bomb to Coleman with the added yards on the flag. It was just a really, really fun first half, even with Buffalo looking so good. And then kind of off the bat, it was 35-14 before you even blinked. And you said to yourselves, okay, the biggest issue with this game is probably Detroit's defense. And all the injuries that they have piled up this season, which I believe is up to like 19 total players either injured on IR. Just an absolute mess from that point of view. And it keeps on stacking on top of each other, which tends to be a bigger deal in the NFL. We talk about compounding injuries, and I think that's what Detroit ends up facing, even bringing in new bodies. From Buffalo's side, 35 points today at one point. They're the 5th team all time to score 30 plus in 8 consecutive games within a season. First since the 2013 Broncos. I mean, they are on absolute fire right now and don't seem like they can even be stopped. And it's mostly Josh, who is now minus 900 to win the MVP. Kind of rolling away with that one. But what else do you have here? I mean, there's so many different angles within Detroit and Buffalo and the division, and even Goff throwing 5 touchdowns and no picks and losing the game. Just absolutely absurd. What do you got, Brandon?
Yeah, 6 yards short of a 505 game for Jared Goff, and he's like a footnote on the game. Amon-Ra is almost 200 yards. He's a footnote on the game. Crazy game. Josh Allen, 430 yards rushing and passing, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 2 by air, over 10 yards per pass. Definitely feels like MVP is a book. We're done here. Like, especially because, again, we talked about this. Patriots, Jets, Patriots left on the schedule. So barring just like a huge collapse against teams that the Bills are just frankly way better than right now. Big picture, let me start there. I think MVP is a wrap. I think the Bills are really live for that 1 seed still. They're 2 losses behind the Chiefs, but they're really only 1 back, remember, because they beat them head to head. The Steelers lost, so that's probably not in it. We didn't really think they were going to be the 1 seed anyway. And the Bills are going to win out. And by the way, we'll get back to the Chiefs, but there's a pretty important injury that happened with the Chiefs today. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills are suddenly sitting at the 1 seed. The Lions suddenly go from the class of the NFC to tied for the 1 seed and tied for the division. Now they have both tiebreakers, so they're still okay. But man, you go from dream season Super Bowl favorites to 1 bad game, and suddenly you could be the 5 seed really easily here. You lose, I forget when they play Minnesota, week 17 or 18, they play the Vikings again. You lose that game, you're the 5 seed. You drop out of the bye week, you drop out of the 1 seed, you lose the home field. You're playing on the road in Philadelphia now. We know about Jared Goff there. So to me, big picture, this is easily the big takeaway from the week of football. To me, digging into, okay, well, what about just week to week? What do I make of this game? So almost 1,100 yards of offense is ridiculous. Just like similar to last week, Bills, Rams, you were like, I got to run this back and watch it again. I'm definitely watching this one again. Like, I just need to see it all again. Here's the takeaway for me. So you see like just the yardage, 559 to 521. Detroit actually had more first downs, 30 to 28. That's a just buttload of first downs. 12 trips to the red zone between the teams. On the surface and the score, 6-point game in the 40s, kind of was like, oh, just classic shootout back and forth, whoever had the ball last. That's not what the underlying numbers say. You can look at the early downs. Early downs are a lot more telling of, okay, who dominated on early downs. That's more telling. There's a lot more data there. The Bills had, for the game, 99th percentile EPA overall and on early downs, 0.42 per play on early downs. The Lions on early downs, 0.01 EPA per play, like barely 50% on 61 early downs. So huge sample from the game of the Lions offense. We know the defenses didn't show up in this game, but the Bills defense actually kind of did show up. The Bills defense against the Lions did its job. They got those stops early to get the big lead. What they didn't do is the Lions ended the game on 4 straight touchdown drives when it was like kind of sort of mostly garbage time, right? Like the Lions got somewhat back into the game, but never really quite. There's going to be a lot of conversation about the onside kick with about 12 minutes left. The Lions are down 10. Dan Campbell being Dan Campbell decides to onside it. I don't have a huge problem with it, to be honest. You're down 10 to a really good team at that point. Like, you're pretty low chances to win. You're going to have to take a chance at some point. I don't love it. It wouldn't be my choice there, but I can't fault it. Your defense isn't exactly stopping them anyway. So sure, give yourself like a 10-15% chance at getting the ball back. To me, I think that we're going to overreact to Buffalo's defense. They did just give up 40 points 2 weeks in a row now to the Rams and the Lions. I thought against the Rams, that's just Stafford absolutely cooking. Like, dude was dealing, just hitting guys, just diming them up. This game is the Bills defense doing pretty well for the most part when it mattered, kind of taking his foot off the gas a little bit late, and third downs and late downs, the Lions did come through in a big way. That matters. You're going to have to make a stop at some point, Buffalo. But I think we collectively may overreact to the Bills defense. This was a pretty dominant win by Buffalo, despite the final stats and scoreline.
Yeah, let me answer both those questions you kind of brought up. So Detroit's remaining schedule would be at Chicago, at San Francisco, and then they end with Minnesota at home. And to kind of tell your point about the early downs, I mean, even that 66-yard touchdown that Amon-Ra was on 3rd and 17.
Yeah.
That's not predictive. That's just relatively some luck factor there. So I do kind of think those numbers actually matter. And then, yeah, I mean, the most interesting point is that Buffalo keeps playing these 40-40 games. Detroit's defense seems to be in a lull, and Kansas City hasn't given up 30 points since like the 80s. So... I mean,
it just that's 30 yet this season either, though.
That's also true. Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're kind of just playing a different game overall. So, to me, this is an interesting note. I think it shows a lot from Buffalo's offensive standpoint. I think defense leaves a lot to be desired, but Buffalo also faces, I believe, New England still twice. So. There's a lot to potentially get right before the playoffs, and I think you're right. A lot of people are going to assume Kansas City is going to lose this game to Houston this week. Assume it is Carson Wentz. They're a 2.5-point home underdog, so we could see an absolute flip in a week or so. All right, let's keep moving here. Great games today, because this game might actually be at the top on some other weeks. But Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. Philadelphia wins the game 27-13, covers the 5.5-point spread. Total goes under 43. I mean, my first note for this contest is Pittsburgh trails 17-3. Philly finally starts well, up 10-3 into the first quarter. There wasn't really a lot to say, especially on Pittsburgh's point of view, as they started with 4 punts on the first 5 possessions. Philly's kind of moving the ball up and down the field. Pittsburgh had minus 19 yards on that first 5 possessions. I mean, there was legitimately nothing to be done, especially through the air, against the stingiest pass defense in the NFL when it comes to the Eagles, and it showed. I mean, obviously, they get into the mix a little bit. There's a 70-yard drive. Russ finds Freiermuth. There's a 3rd down conversion or 2. So they end up finding it, but not if it would have been there consistently throughout the game. I think Pittsburgh might have found themselves down 1 score with potentially an opportunity here. But the Najee fumble probably ends the game for them, as leads to the tush push 27-13. You know, TJ Watt gets hurt, and all of a sudden Pittsburgh can't find their way back into the game. The one thing I will add the Pickens injury and missing from this contest definitely was shown all over the field. They had one play of 20-plus yards, I believe, which was the Calvin Austin. Now, Pickens this year has 16 receptions of 20-plus yards entering this week. That only trailed 3 receivers in the NFL. So, obviously, we were missing the moon ball here, and I think there was a touchdown or two off the board that might have been there otherwise. So, to me, that's probably the biggest takeaway. I mean, Philly continues to look really good. I mean, it's just a 10-game win streak during the last 11 games for Hurts. He has 15 passing touchdowns, 1 pick, 13 rushing touchdowns. It's 28-1 in that category for what he's putting on the board. Just kind of absolutely stupid. Anything else you have here?
Yeah, a lot of talk this week about Philadelphia fixing the passing game. It's fixed. A.J. Brown and Devontae both had 109-plus yards and a touchdown each. Pittsburgh's offense, they had the ball twice the entire second half. I don't know if I remember ever seeing a team have 2 possessions in the second half. Here's why. Philadelphia gets the ball back, buried down near the goal line with 10 and a half minutes left. They ended the game on a 21-play, 88-yard drive, just running the clock out. They didn't even score. They didn't need to. They just ran the clock out. Philadelphia had 40 minutes of possession. They had over 400 yards versus 163 for the Steelers. That's just domination both ways. I think, I know we talk about it each week. I think the Philadelphia defense might sort of be the story of the league right now. If you put Philly and Detroit on neutral field, I think we would feel better about Detroit's offense still, but the defense is looking like a chasm right now because they're just Detroit's early defense, Philly's late defense. It's the ships passing in the night. And I think we still think of Detroit as the 1 seed in the NFC. I wouldn't be shocked if we look back a month from now and think today was the day where we the changing of the guard day in the NFC, perhaps.
The only thing I'll say before I move forward, and it's kind of like a league-wide picture a little bit, we have a lot of really good teams, maybe even great teams at the top here entering the playoffs. I feel like this is maybe one of the more fun setups I can remember in history having lately. Just a lot of good teams, a lot of good quarterbacks. Hopefully it'll be fun. Next week, Pittsburgh and Baltimore face off. I know we're going to talk about that potentially later in the show, but 10-4, 9-5. Pittsburgh's at 1 game up on them after winning before, so massive matchup for that division. Okay, I'm going to bring up my big stat here before we get to the best of the rest. And this is just something interesting I had looked at before, and I believe I mentioned it in previous weeks. And it actually came into effect in Sunday Night Football, where teams to lead at the half this year are now 87, 124, and 3 against the second half spread, 41%. Worst season we have in our Bet Labs database dating back 20 years. So even if you look last 3 years over a 700 game sample, they're just 44% against the second half spread. Now tonight, Green Bay leads 20-3, but even in the second half, they were -0.5 on the close, so they don't get the cover. Similar situation. Here's the interesting part. Only 7 of 32 teams are above 500 in this area when leading the last 3 years. And the best quarterbacks are just Dak, Baker, Trevor Lawrence, and Lamar Jackson. So this has just been very difficult for quarterbacks to overcome and to keep it up in the second half, and you've had a bunch of comebacks. So something interesting to keep track of going forward. All right, let's get to the you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's tricky because I'm sure that those trends are tracking the closing line, of course, in the second half. So I'm interested in, could I be profiting if I know who's going to lead at halftime? If I have a good read on who's going to be the better team in the first half, like the Texans in the first half when we get there, can I be profiting by taking the Texans first half, not Texans second half before the game? And am I setting myself up for some value on the line? Because the line, of course, is going to adjust a little bit based on the fact that the team is ahead, based on the team behind is losing script and probably going to close the gap in most cases. So I wonder if there's more there, knowing that especially a game with a big favorite, for example, where you expect the favorite to be out ahead early, maybe that sets you up for the second half spread, but you got to take it before that line drops to adjust for the early lead that's coming. A little cat and mouse game to look into, maybe.
Yeah, there's also something there to potentially take the team trailing just live in the second half versus touching that second half number, kind of knowing this information. But all right, for another day, let's keep rolling here. Washington at New Orleans. So Washington barely survives 2019, but New Orleans covers the 7.5 point spread, which is pretty historic in itself. I'll talk about that in a second before I toss it to you. But the total goes under 44.5. So the last time the Saints had closed above +7 at home in the Superdome was back in 1999. So they start 7.5 today. Jake Heener goes to Spencer Rattler, and we kind of go from there. What else you got here, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, the Commanders were rolling 17-0 in halftime, 20-7 into the fourth quarter, facing what's then the third string quarterback or whatever Spencer Rattler is. Rattler in the second half, 71-yard touchdown drive, 51-yard field goal drive, 59-yard field goal drive, 56-yard touchdown drive, carving up the Commanders. Like, they get the touchdown tomorrow with zeros on the clock. You can kick the extra point. You're the Saints. Who cares? Go for 2. They do. It's a good decision. Don't love the little running rollout play with one receiver option. Could have done with something better there. Frankly, it's the right result for both teams. The Saints don't really want the win. The Commanders really need the win. Commanders should have just crushed in this game. They had the ball almost 41 minutes. The Saints had only 2 drives the entire game over 3 minutes, and neither of those even hit 4 minutes. So rough on their defense, except here's the one note that I do have for the Commanders. You get the win. I think they're pretty clearly, to me, easily the worst team in the NFC playoff field right now, and they look pretty safe now with this win that they're lucky to get. One play could have flipped it. They gave up 8 sacks today. Jane Daniels got sacked 8 times by a Saints defense that was not making a lot of stops or doing a lot of other good stuff here. Daniels only had 6 incompletions. He had a good game, but 8 sacks. That's not a great look for an offensive line that was supposed to be bad coming into the year. They were pretty low in my rankings. And then they were looking really good first half of the season. They got a bunch of injuries. They thought they were getting healthier. Hasn't looked good again. 8 sacks is not a great number. So I think that's something to keep an eye on with what looks like probably a playoff team here.
Yeah, Philly, Atlanta, Dallas is what Washington has left on the schedule. And you're right. I mean, they look a little flimsy, especially with that game in New Orleans today. You would have figured they would have, won by 10 plus, and that would have made you feel better. And maybe they should have at certain points, but definitely let them get back in the game. All right. Jets at the Jaguars. So the Jets win the game 32-25. They cover as 3.5-point favorites. Total goes over 41.5. Now, from my notes, this is the battle of the 2 worst teams on the money line in terms of profit this year. Jags now the worst at 3-11 straight up, losing $100 better, $876. And for the Jets, they avoid their 7th loss as a favorite this year. So 6 losses as a favorite, same as San Francisco. This one had a little bit of chaos to it. So what else you got here?
Yeah, this one has no business being this high in the rundown, but look, it was probably the most entertaining game of that ugly early slate. So back and forth all game. I was invested because I was on Jets -3 in this one. And look, Jets -3 had no business cashing here. The Jets are down 5 late. They get the touchdown. Devontae Adams absolutely detonated in the second half. He finishes with 9 catches, 198 yards, and 2 scores, all in the second half. All of that was in the second half. He had nothing at halftime. He got an octopus on the long touchdown and the 2-point conversion. So Jets go from down 5, get the long Devontae touchdown, get the 2-point conversion, go up 3. I'm like, okay, great. I'll take a push. Lord, give me the push. Give me my money back. I'm out. The Jets defense, not good all game. Giving up 25 to Mac Jones. That's like the last 4 games combined for Mac Jones almost. They go right down the field. They get the field goal. And then the Jets get right back down the field, do the thing they shouldn't, and score a touchdown. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to kneel at the 1 and kick the field goal and this be over. They get the touchdown. So we get the cover because whether you had Jets -3 or Jets -3.5, you're looking at probably a push or a loss if the field goal goes up. Instead, if you were dumb enough like me to bet on this game, the Jets get a pretty ugly cover here. We'll take it. I appreciate the win. It's been a rough couple of weeks. Brian Thomas for Jacksonville, monster day for him also. 10 catches, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I saw some Rookie of the Year talk for him. I think Jane Daniels is probably a wrap at this point. Helpful that he got that win. Helpful that Bo Nix had not a great day today. But Brian Thomas definitely looks like a keeper for Jacksonville going forward.
I do think it's probably easy to be in that locker room after the win where you can probably say you've got the Rams, Bills, and Dolphins coming up, where you might as well say they're all at home and you can play spoiler, right? So let's finish out the season strong and try to fight our way through these 3 teams and see if you can ruin some playoff chances. Probably the best thing you can say in New York right now. All right, let's go to the I'll call it the what if game of the day, because this one was just, this could, goes a lot of ways, but Indy, Denver. So the final score does not indicate anything here because Denver wins 31-13. They cover the 4.5-point spread. The total actually pushes a close of 44, which probably says to how wacky this game was in general. The game first half wise for the Colts, you can kind of see they were trying to get the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands. And they had 20 rushes, some from Richardson, 17 passes. Richardson goes 5 of 17 for 56 yards and an interception, but they lead 13-7. And that's kind of an indication of what this entire game was, since Denver couldn't run the ball either. Bo Nix throws 3 picks with 3 touchdowns. It was just an absolute mess, but it's all highlighted by the fact that at 13-7, Jonathan Taylor has a 41-yard touchdown run and drops the ball before the goal line. Now, if he scores the touchdown, he pulls a Deshaun Jackson for all of us out there. But if he scores the touchdown, it's 20-7. Denver's now in a trailing game script. Maybe Nix throws the same type of interceptions later in the game, and they can't get back in it. And this one was virtually for Indianapolis's playoff hopes. They are still mathematically in it, but basically this one kind of turns everything and creates the biggest opportunity, I believe, an 8-year drought opportunity for the Denver Broncos to make the playoffs. But this will always be remembered for probably the Jonathan Taylor drop at the end zone. From there, 13-7 turns into 31-13 Broncos, especially after the Nick Bonito pick 6, which is now a humongous defensive player of the year conversation. I looked at markets a few minutes ago when we were recording. I didn't see anything up, but he was 40-1 entering the week at a few sports books. And JJ Watt obviously was the TJ Watt was the odds-on favorite, but he gets injured today. You assume he keeps going. Either way, very interesting to have that type of situation in back-to-back weeks to basically send your team to a playoff opportunity. But the thing I look at is Anthony Richardson overall. So he has 253 pass attempts this year, 47% completion percentage. Since 2000, there's only been 2 quarterbacks, 250-plus pass attempts, under 50% completion percentage. Tim Tebow, 2011, Achilles Smith in 2000. Oof. Let me tell you, that is not a list Anthony Richardson wants to be on, even early in his career. And then to me, that's the story. It's his play that's kind of let Indy get into this spot because they can't rely on the pass game.
Yeah, I think so. This was a game that I was on the under on. This was a hot read under. And the second straight week, I hate this. I was on the wrong side of a line move off the hot read. I had 43.5. We closed at 44. So we pushed the closing number. I lost the hook. Now I'll say this. That was the right read. The defenses were dominating. We're coasting to the under until the Colts turned over the last 4 possessions in a row to end the game. We'd rather win bets, not have fake wins. So yeah, rough ending as far as just how the total goes here. It's how Denver goes. Nix actually did throw another interception. After that Jonathan Taylor fumble, it's still 13-7. He throws another bad pick, his 3rd of the game. What happens for the Colts? They fumble the next play and give it right back to them. And then that was where the avalanche started for Denver. So yeah, I think I saw, depending on the model, basically this puts Denver close to 90% for the playoffs and drops Indy at 10 or below here. So Denver is effectively in, even though they've got a pretty tough schedule yet. They would probably have to lose out and have one of the Colts or Bengals, or I think there's maybe one other team, the Dolphins, I think would have to win out just to force a tie. But again, Denver obviously beats the Colts head-to-head because they just beat them head-to-head. So yeah, not a lot of paths left here. Colts get eliminated from the division with a loss here as well. Texans clinch there. So yeah, the playoff picture, Denver looking like they were going to lose, Washington looking like they might have lost, would have made the playoffs look more interesting. Instead, we might just be jostling for positioning at this point.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the other AFC West team in a second, but it looks like the AFC is kind of locked. NFL Next Gen Stats has the Broncos at 91% playoffs and the Colts at 10%, the Chargers at 87%, which kind of says we're locked in here. I believe Denver makes the playoffs with a win on Thursday Night Football coming up against the Chargers. So it is a win and in situation there. And funny enough, the Broncos 11-3 against the spread this season. They are the best team in the NFL in that number. 7-0 against the spread as favorites. Wild stuff. All right, Bucks Chargers. So Bucks win this game 40-17. They cover as 3-point road underdogs. The total sails over 46. And this game kind of starts the same way every Tampa Bay game starts. They have averaged 3.7 points per game on first drives of this season for Tampa Bay. And here we go. Baker to McMillan, they go up 7-0, and they kind of never look back at some point, right? Because they trailed. Herbert had 2 touchdowns at the half, but the difference was the two turnovers in the first half for Tampa Bay that kind of brought them behind. And then the same thing we see every week from Justin Herbert, which is he is now 12-32 against the second half spread when leading at the half in his career, just letting teams getting back in. And you see Baker, he finds Mike Evans twice. Herbert's streak ends in terms of the interceptions, and he was, wasn't a great situation. He was pinned back in his territory. He throws it up to Johnston. And at that point, the thing I think is interesting from Baker's point of view, 3rd in passing yards this year, 3rd in completion percentage, 3rd in touchdown passes. I mean, when he's trailing, he has 13 touchdowns and 6 picks and a 70% completion percentage. So he is really getting Tampa Bay back in every game they trail and at least making it competitive. And I think that's why they sit in this position, especially with Atlanta floundering.
Yeah, I the only concern that I have for the Chargers going forward, well, I guess not only, I have a lot of concern for the Chargers going forward after this. We talked Bucs a lot over the last month. They're sitting pretty. Chargers now have a defense that I'm losing faith in quickly after this game, certainly. I think it was 27-0 in the second half. So we don't trust them in the second half. We don't trust the defense right now. Justin Herbert rolls the ankle again, and now they get to play Denver on Thursday night in a game that's probably not going to be a lot of fun to watch because it's probably going to be kind of one of those low-scoring Thursday games. But if you want drama in the playoff picture, the Chargers losing with Justin Herbert injured creates some drama because suddenly they get to 8-7 after that. And at 8-7, 3 other teams with 6 wins, any one of them gets 1 win. You're suddenly only a game back. Now, look, and the Chargers play the Raiders and Patriots to close out the season, so they certainly should do the job. Chargers, do they ever should do anything they're supposed to? So I don't know. Like, maybe the door is open here. I was getting ready to buy into this team, and I bet the Chargers this game. They completely laid an egg here. This wasn't even that close, the way that the stats turn out. Like, Tampa Bay absolutely rolled in the second half. So this was probably, to me, the biggest surprise result of the day.
Yeah, the Chargers have lost to the Ravens, Chiefs, and Bucks. I mean, you can say what you want about that tough competition, but how about this one? You mentioned the defense. So since week 11, Chargers are 21st in EPA per play on defense, 23rd in success rate, and they're 20th or worse in dropback and rush EPA on D. So definitely not the defense, at least based off opponent, we had seen prior allowing like 14, 15 points per game. All right, we're going to go quickly now. Rest of the slate. So Miami at the Texans. Houston wins the game 20-12. They cover the 2.5 point spread. Total goes under 46.5. Storyline here is just the Texans do their job again, which is covering the first half, which is now 12-2 against the first half spread this season, best mark in the NFL. And I tweeted this one out, and it's just crazy how this one keeps going this way. So Mike McDaniel is 1-12 straight up road neutral games versus a team above 500. Pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, the offense just can't show up against a really good defense, certainly with the defense that had an extra week to prepare here. So
yeah,
we got this one right. Joe Mixon leaves injured for a while. They couldn't run the ball at all. Honestly, just an ugly game for both teams. Like, Houston didn't even play that well offensively. They have 181 yards in a win in what was kind of almost a comfortable win for the most part here. Why? 4 turnovers. Tua Tagovailoa was terrible in this game. 3 interceptions, lost a fumble, sacked 3 times. bad yards per attempt. Leading receiver in either side this game with all the weapons on these teams, Malik Washington with 52 yards. So just ugly game, barely hit 400 yards combined. I don't even know that it was a great defensive game. I think it was just kind of an ugly game where neither team really hit the mark. These are both teams, Houston and Miami, that I think have been among the more disappointing teams on the season. The difference is that Miami's probably out at 6-8. Houston clinched the division today. So 9-5, they're in. I don't know. Maybe Houston, it doesn't really matter how mid they've been for the first 3 months of the season. If they can get some momentum here and figure some things out, find some offense. I don't love that this is what you get coming out of the bye week, but we got a month here. Maybe they can find something. They're going to get a home playoff game.
I'm just sad we're probably not going to get Texans Bengals on that Saturday for the wild card, which I feel like I've gotten 7 times in my lifetime. All right.
That's the playoff opener on a Saturday if I've ever heard of a matchup before.
Andy Dalton, TJ Yates. Okay. Chiefs, Browns. Chiefs win the game 21-7. They cover as 4.5-point road favorites. Total goes under 41.5. Really, looking at the box score, it's pretty simple. The Chiefs had 10 takeaways entering today through 13 games. They had 6 today. Almost 38% of their turnovers for the year came in one game. And obviously, Chiefs end their streak, their first cover since October 20th for the defending champs.
Yeah, Santa Jameis came to town, 5 sacks, 3 interceptions. They bench him. He might be done now. Dorian Thompson-Robinson comes in, immediately throws an interception as well. I think it's over for the Browns. Jameis is probably done. DTR is not a good quarterback. Nick Chubb breaks his foot. Yeah. Awful luck. Like, for all the luck Kansas City's had already this season to get all this turnover luck and all the fumble recoveries in one game. However, if we're talking about luck, the main takeaway here from the game, Chiefs offensive line, not good. It is not good right now. They allowed a 54% pressure rate to Patrick Mahomes when he was in, highest since 2020. And I have to say when he was in, because he took multiple big hits, left the game late. He's, quote, week to week with the right ankle injury. And as you said earlier, the Texans are favored in Kansas City on Saturday, which can only mean that books are expecting Mahomes not to play. And I got to say this, why would you play him? The next 2 weeks, I know that we got these games, island games on TV. They play Christmas after that. You're playing Houston and Pittsburgh with no blocking against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, and then TJ Watt and Highsmith and all those. Like, these are 2 of the best pass rushes in the NFL. Do you want to play for the bye, or do you want to just take the bye right now? Like, I got my Carson jersey on today because the Eagles won and Carson got to play, and my family's all texting me, Carson's in. Like, nobody else in the world is excited Carson is in. A modest proposal. Play Carson the next 2 weeks. If you get cooked, whatever. The only thing you need to do is just get Patrick healthy, find some blocking, and try again a month from now in the playoffs. If he's not healthy, it doesn't matter anyway. So take your bye week now. Come with some losses. I think we might be headed that direction here after the injury.
And honestly, if you play Wentz both weeks, you'll probably go 1-1. Andy Reid will figure something out. They'll find some voodoo in some way, shape, form, or fashion. All right, let's keep going here. New England at Arizona. I don't think we need to speak much about this. I mean, Arizona wins the game 30-17 as 17 as 6-point favorites. Total goes over 46.5, just barely without the 2-minute warning there. I mean, the whole game could have probably went a different way if it wasn't for the Jonah Williams fumble recovery in the end zone. Absolutely huge. Basically makes the game 10-0 Arizona versus 3-0 with New England getting the ball back. Arizona leads 13-3 at the half. Both quarterbacks are playing just fine. I mean, Kyler's not making mistakes in this one because he's not pressured as much, and he's facing a defense that's not really giving him much to worry about, which seems like in this one. First half, Arizona, 7.3 yards per play. I mean, they were moving the ball relatively easily. He gets hurt for a few in this game. I believe Kyler's going to be just fine, but we see a little bit of a Clayton Tune, which wasn't exciting for Arizona playoff backers. But, I mean, Drake May's interception, I don't know if you saw it in this one, but literally hits Keyshawn Boutte in the hands. 6 straight start with an INT for May, but obviously didn't deserve it. He honestly had a good day. 19-23 for 202, touchdown and a pick, but he also ran in a touchdown. I keep saying this week over week, but I do think he is part of the future for the team, and they just need to figure out ways to build around him. But I kind of do like what I see. Big James Conner day. Trey McBride continues to do exactly what he does, which is not catch touchdowns, but catch tons of balls. And that's kind of it. I mean, Arizona, and this stat just basically says everything about who they are. They are full Jekyll and Hyde, and you pretty much never know what you're going to get, except for the fact Kyler is 20-11 straight up versus teams below 500, and 11-25 versus teams above 500. So they beat up on the bad. It's kind of what they do.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say. Cardinals just get a win, and we'll see. They're kind of hanging around there. So we'll get to another team hanging around here with the Bengals.
Yeah, Bengals win the game 37-27. Cover is 6-point road favorites. Total goes over 46.5. Now, Titans move to 2-12 against the spread this year. They're just the fourth team in the Super Bowl era to do that, first since the 2016 Browns. And Burrow just kind of dominated. Great offense. What else you got here? Anything to talk about?
Yeah, we're just super, super goofy game. 10 turnovers in this game, 26 penalties for 223 yards. Just a really weird game that, quite frankly, is not that flattering to the Bengals. They were kind of mostly in control, only because Will Levis had 3 interceptions on 12 passes. He gets benched. Mason Rudolph comes in and immediately carves up Cincinnati's defense because that's what everyone else is doing. So in 6 days, Bengals barely beat the Titans and barely beat the Cowboys to keep their playoff hopes alive, I guess. I don't know. I don't need to see this team in the playoffs. Their defense is cooked. Burrow, you're right. Big game. He also had 2 interceptions and lost a fumble. That stuff counts as well. Bengals are not dead, but I'm not sure that they've been alive for a long time already.
Yeah, just showing you that they need to revamp the defense, and they probably won't have T. Higgins if they want to do that. All right, Dallas at Carolina. Dallas wins the game 30-14, covers his 2.5-point road underdog. Total goes over 42. Honestly, Carolina's streak of 33 consecutive games as an underdog gets broken here. But on the other side, they never cover as a favorite. They've now lost 10 consecutive games against the spread as a favorite, dating back to October of 2021. Every other team in the NFL has at least 3 covers as a favorite during this span. It's just unreal. I don't know. What do you have? I mean, we're never going to see Carolina as a favorite again, right?
I don't know what we're doing here. They hadn't covered a 2.5-point spread. They'd only covered it once in the last 2 seasons. And that still is a present tense stat because they weren't even close here. It was as much of a domination as it looks like. Rico Dowdle is running all over them. CeeDee Lamb has a big game. Bryce Young facing a slightly decent defense, suddenly not looking so good. 6 sacks, 2 interceptions. Not great. Carolina, first time favorite in 34 games. I think we got to wait another 34 to see that again.
All right, let's just keep going. Those teams are most likely going to be out very soon. I know Dallas still has a long shot. All right, Baltimore at the Giants. Baltimore wins a game 35-14. Last game on the slate before we get to Monday Night Football, but they cover as 16.5-point road favorites. Total goes over 43.5. I mean, this was the largest spread for the Giants in a home game since 1966, and it showed most of the time. I mean, between DeVito, they just really didn't have much offense to show here. I believe there was a touchdown to Neighbors in there, but Lamar looked great.
Yeah, Lamar, 5 touchdowns, 290 yards, 65 yards rushing. It's a scrimmage, basically, the way their offense is playing. 99th percentile, EPA, success rate, first down percent, all those things. You can't do any better. I had my notes here. I took this as a plus 980 Giants money line just on the number alone. Man, we got screwed. Tommy DeVito goes down hurt. We had this thing in the bag. It was 14-7. Don't give me Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle? You're in the league still? Like Tim Boyle, he of Thanksgiving fame from a few years ago from the Lions. Like, how is this dude playing football still in the NFL? I don't know. Ravens, this is what you're supposed to do when you play a terrible team. Blow them out of the water. So credit where it's due. They did the thing.
Yeah. Tim Boyle is my worst quarterback in the NFL. I think I said this on previous podcasts, and I was shocked when he threw the touchdown, so I couldn't really tweet anything. I mean, he did have a touchdown pass today. All right, let's move to Monday Night Football. So we've got a doubleheader. Bears, Vikings, and Falcons and the Raiders. Right now, it believes Desmond Ridder will be getting the start, I think, for the Raiders, but I don't know if that's been confirmed, but I believe that is the truth. So with that being said, we get a revenge game with Ritter facing the Falcons here. And to just talk about two angles on both sides, and I'll give you a bet that I was on. So Ritter and Caleb Williams have both struggled in first half. So Caleb is 4-9 first half ATS and 0-6 on the road, and Ritter is 5-12 first half ATS in their careers. So just kind of had trouble starting in both of those atmospheres. And the one other one which kind of gets all the flub and everyone talks about is Cousins in prime time. So he began his career 0-9 on Monday Night Football. He's actually won 4 of his last 5 starts. So kind of flipping the situation there. I think we can put that well behind us. The one bet I put in the app, Younghoe Koo over 1.5 field goals. I know Max Crosby out on the other side, but Raiders do a decent job at stopping offenses in the red zone, and they also allow a butt ton of field goals. So I think that is an opportunity indoors for him. But what do you like here?
Am I doing both games at once here?
Yeah, why not? Show it. Let's do it.
Yeah. All right, well, let me start. I got one responsible pick and one off the rails pick. So let's start responsible. So Vikings have beat the Bears 6 of the last 7. 8 out of 10 games between these teams have been one score outing. So Chicago +7. I think you have to lean Bears if you want a side here. If you want props, I like DJ Moore. Vikings have not been good against wide receiver ones. Jordan Addison crushed the Bears a month ago. 8 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. Bears have been bottom 3 against wide receiver 2. So I think Addison props are a good way to go. I bet the under on this one already. We talked about this, I think, a week ago. So that's my pick here. Under 43.5. Both teams are still 8-5 to the under. This line moved up a little bit from a week ago because they both had big games scoring, but I think we're just getting a free point here. Sunday, Monday night unders since 2019, 61%. Monday Night Football division game unders, 57% to the under last 2 decades. Week 14 and later, division matchups. Home favorite of 7 or less, under is 57%. Total in this 40s-ish range, 56% to the under. This is a game that closed a month ago at 39.5. Now we're at 43.5. We're getting 4 free points, basically. Now, look, it went over in that game, 30-27 in overtime. It's only the third time in 15 games between these teams that either team hit 30 points. During that stretch, averaging under 39 points a game between them, 45 or less in 11 out of 15. So I like the under 43.5, wherever you get it best in that range. That's the responsible pick. Then to the other game. I needed something. I need something for the game. I can't help feeling like I don't even play fantasy football anymore. I retired. I'm out on top. Sincere McCormick feels like a fantasy football league winner. Nobody even heard of this dude like 3 weeks ago. He's the exact sort of guy that's going to come up and put like some big games these next couple of weeks. So I don't hate if you just want to go with that. Here's my totally responsible play. Remember Texans Island from last year? Texans Island all the way to the division. I had 2 islands to start the season. I started on Texans Island and Falcons Island. I had a front row seat to the Desmond Ridder disaster. I watched a lot of Desmond Ridder last year. This dude's not an NFL quarterback. However, he's a pretty good runner. Desmond Ridder plus 450 to score a touchdown. And anytime touchdown, you got to run it in, my friend, or catch it if you need to. I don't care how you get there. Gilles Gallant, stamp of approval on this one. I know he's writing this one up as well. Last season, Ridder did have 5 rushing touchdowns. He would have had 6 if there's a stupid game against the Bucs, if you recall, where like late in the game, he's running, he's clearly going to score, and he slows down before the end zone, gets the ball knocked out of the end zone for a touchback. 5 rushing touchdowns as it is, 4th most among all quarterbacks, tied with Lamar Jackson last year. Like 5 is a real number, plus 450 is a good number. That's not so irresponsible, but I noticed from watching last year, Ridder panics late in the game and only trusts his legs. If the game is still kind of close, or if they're doing a garbage time sort of drive, he loves to run late in the game. Twice last year, he had the last touchdown in the game, and in both Bucs games, he should have had the last touchdown in the game. That one play I just mentioned, and another one where he had a late touchdown, they gave up a touchdown with like 30 seconds left. So I'm counting that as half a win for each. 3 last touchdowns last year. Desmond Ridder, 25-1 to get the last touchdown in this game. And then to just take the escalator all the way up. since Kirk Cousins can't show up in Monday Night Football 4-10 ATS, how about a Desmond Ridder revenge game? Last touchdown in a win, 60-1. That's my Desmond Ridder, completely irresponsible escalator. Please bet pizza money only on it. But why not have a little fun? We got to watch this garbage game on the second screen, and we may as well win something on it.
And you can add Ritter's second half anytime touchdown on that, because that actually, it's not guaranteed by last touchdown.
Oh,
so
that's true. Good point.
You might as well juice that up a little bit. And please, if you're going to be responsible and put some small pizza money on what Brandon just said, you might as well also put it on Atlanta to have the first touchdown, or some other reason for Ridder to throw the ball to the other team. So at least if he uses his legs, you're going to win the bet. But on the other scenario that he pulls exactly what he's done every other time in his career, you might as well have a small ticket on that as well. All right, well, that is Monday Night Football. So now we are going to get into your hot read right now. Now, I have a fun stat, which I've used forever on this game, but I'm going to let you first tell the crowd kind of what you're doing here, and I can kind of end it after.
Yeah, I'm going to Saturday. We're starting our Saturday holiday games. One of those games is Patrick Mahomes maybe, or Patrick Mahomes watching. I'm going to the other Saturday game. Old Faithful. If you've been listening or following me for a few years, you already know right where I'm going on Steelers-Ravens. I want the underdog, and I want the under. So both hot reads are coming from this game. Steelers plus 6.5, under 46.5 on the game. So both of those numbers are touch below a key number. I don't mind if you want to wait. You might get a +7. You might get the 47. TJ Watt is a question mark, so that could certainly push things that way. Obviously, I would like TJ Watt to play here, but I'm just going to kind of make the case for both of these together. So first with the matchup. Mike Tomlin's defense just has answers for Baltimore. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you the football reason, but here's Baltimore's point total the last 8 games against the Steelers. 16, 10, 10, 13, 16, 13, 19, 14. They haven't scored 20 points in any one of those games. This is a team that is putting up monster points. They're just going up and down the field on teams. Pittsburgh has figured out Lamar Jackson somehow. The elite pass rush hasn't figured out. Their pass defense has been even better lately. Baltimore's defense, I think, is a little bit gettable, but the pass defense is improving. Hopefully, Pittsburgh, if you're backing them, gets George Pickens back. I think that's a spot on the deep ball that Russ can maybe hit a couple of the moon balls. Pittsburgh is a pretty big special teams advantage here. Sorry, Justin Tucker, I love you, but it's not happening for you lately. Pittsburgh, those same 8 games against Baltimore, they haven't scored 21 either game either. I'm going to save you reading all the points off, but it's basically the same sort of thing. So that's the rivalry here. Throw everything else out, play the rivalry. Last 9 games, Pittsburgh's won 8 of the 9, but all 9 games are within 1 score. So we're at 6.5 here. That's probably going to stay within 1 score. Please don't be a 7-point game. 6 straight meetings, 34 points combined or below. So that sets up for the under and the Steelers. Now here are my trends. I'm afraid I might steal your trend along the way because this is one of my favorites. But under 46.5. Look, the Rays have been an over team. They're 11-3 to the over. Their games not playing Pittsburgh this year average 55 points a game. They scored 34. No, they didn't score 34. They combined to score 34 in the Pittsburgh game. That's just what happens in this game. I mentioned some of those late season division game trends. Home favorite under 7, 58%. Total in the 40 to 47 range, 56% of the under. Outdoor conditions, 62% of the under. It looks like some wind and possible rain a week away, so we'll see. Mike Tomlin, road unders, 58%. Most profitable coach in BetLab. So that's the case for the under. And you already know, the Steelers plus 6.5. This is your rah-rah Mike Tomlin spot. From week 5 forward as an underdog, 50, 21-1 ATS, 70%. Today was not a rah-rah spot. We talked about that on the Friday podcast. You don't want him coming off of a win. You don't want him on the road as much. You prefer at home. You prefer in the division. This game is a rah-rah spot. In the division, as an underdog week 5 forward, 24-5-1 under Mike Tomlin, 83%. Also, after a loss by 7 or more, it doesn't happen often. Mike Tomlin underdog, 10-1 ATS week 5 forward, covering by more than 10 points a game. This is the spot you want them. Wounded, coming back. Not on the road, you prefer at home, but we can't get everything here. Underdogs in AFC North division games late in the season, 62%. And then here's the stat that you want. You always back the underdog. Tomlin versus Harbaugh. 24, 6-3 ATS, 80%, including when the underdog is more than a field goal, 13-1 ATS. If you go all the way back since 2005, either team underdog of more than 3 points, 19-2 against the spread. You always take the underdog in this game, even better when you're getting more points. Look, I think the Ravens are better too. I think the Ravens should finally beat them. I got no matchup stuff for you. In this rivalry, you bet the underdog, you bet the under. If you want to put them together, you go plus 239 on the same game parlay. I'm just going to play them both separate. Steelers plus 6.5, under 46.5.
Yeah, I can see a lot of people looking at this as a teaser game. The other thing I'll tell you is the line's pretty big. Steelers haven't closed above plus 5.5 against Baltimore since 2012. And the line I was going to give you was the final margin in the Steelers-Ravens series since 2020, 277-323-154. Since 2015, they've played 19 games, 16 of the 19. Final margin of 7 points or less. So this has been a great series, and I think we're going to get nothing different on Saturday night. And that's it. This has been the Action Network podcast. We recapped every game from week 15 on this beautiful Sunday, and we gave you a little bit of a Monday night football preview, and we will see you again here next week, recapping all the non-bye week amazing action in week 16 with all the games, and we will see you then. Enjoy the night, enjoy the slate, and enjoy the week, everybody.